Welcome to our weekly program, The Inside Story of Chabad in America through the Mindel Archives. Last week, we read a letter from the Rabbi to someone that wrote about a person that needs a refuah, and the Rabbi was very much impressed that people wrote about other people's problems, whether it's parnosa or refuah. So we read the letter of refuah. So I want to just take this letter now, and just 3 lines. I want to read it again, these 3 lines. Needless to say, I was quite impressed with your personal concern for the health of this person. In the present day and age, it is particularly heartwarming to see such concern of one Jew for another, to the extent of taking the trouble to write a letter about it. So the Rebbe was very happy that people think about other people. We have many English letters, which I think I'm going to share with you maybe in the future, about people ask about parnosa, the people don't have parnosa, or people have problem from children. And this shows Ahavas Yisrael. And the Rebbe was very, very satisfied. And the Rebbe liked the idea that people ask and for brachas for other people. Now, speaking about health, Rabbi Mindel writes, because he took dictation, so he knows the Rebbe's derech. Whenever the Rebbe wrote about health, he always combined Bone Chaye Umezeina Revicha, health, livelihood, offsprings. These are 3 essential God-given gifts to enable a Yid, a Jew, to fulfill his or her mission in life. And Rabbi Mindel writes over here, originally, in the time of the Alter Rebbe, when a Chassid would seek the Alter Rebbe's blessing, his guidance in general, it was all about ruchnius, spiritual matters and growth. But before long, Chassidim began to avail themselves to ask the Rebbe's advice about worldly problems, also health, livelihood, and alike. And this how it has been by our Rebbe, Rabbi Mindel writes. During private audience, yichidas, or through his personal correspondence, the Rebbe would give advice, brachas, and matters of health, sustenance, and children. And many times, when people asked the Rebbe about physical health, he combined always physical and spiritual. Meaning, the physical and spiritual health are connected, and and a healthy spirit benefits the body, and a healthy body in turn is necessary for our spiritual welfare to fulfill our obligation in this world. The Rebbe always combined ruchnius and gashmius. And I'll give you an example. Let's say people had problems with children, or people couldn't have children. Many times, the Rebbe used to answer about Taras HaMishpacha, or Nigiyah. Are they careful in Hilchas Nido? These are answers. People that couldn't have children, and even the people that had children, but they had children that went off the derech. They should be careful about Taras HaMishpacha and learn the halachas of Nido. Health bichlal, the Rebbe used to say kashrus. This was a lot of his answers about kashrus, not all the time, but careful in kashrus. When it came to shalom bayis, there were problems. Many times the Rebbe answered mezuzah. Check the mezuzahs. Now, in another place, the Rebbe said that mezuzah comes from 3 words. I mentioned it once. Me, zu, and ze. Mem is 40. 40 is Torah. Because Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went to Har Sinai to get the Torah, he was there Arboim Yoim, Varboim Laila, 40 days. So Mem is Torah. Zu, this goes on the Bnei Yisrael, Yidden. Where it says Am Zu Golto, Am Zu Koniso, Yidden. Ze Keli V'Anvehu, that's the Eibishter. When the wife sees that the husband has a shir, the husband is interested in learning Torah, that brings Shalom Bayis. Also, sometimes the Rebbe said to the husband he should learn with his wife Shabbos in Pirkei Avos. Many letters like that. That brings Shalom Bayis. Zu Bnei Yisrael, have Orchim Shabbos, have guests, have a home of Avram Avinu. When you have that, then Zeh Keli V'Anvehu. Then the Eibishter, God, is a partner in your life. Then there is Shalom Bayis. Many times the Rebbe answered like that. When it came to Amunah, faith, people at Shilas, the Rebbe answered many times Chol of Yisrael. I have a lot of English letters. Chol of Yisrael. Are you careful in Chol of Yisrael? To speed up a refuah, they wrote to the Rebbe that they want the refuah should come faster. The Rebbe says, did you pay the doctor? Was the doctor paid? Meaning that the Rebbe always combined the Gashmis and the Ruchnius. Now I will read this very short letter about what the Rebbe wrote about the Rebbe's and Chaim Mushke's health. The Rebbe writes like this. This is a letter to a doctor. On behalf of Mrs. Schneerson and myself, I wish to express to you, also in writing, our appreciation of your kind attention in connection with Mrs. Schneerson mishap and her medical treatment. There is no need to emphasize to you how much the doctor's personal interest and attention means to the patient, and how important it is also in the healing process. As the Rebbe many times answered, a Reife Yedid, a friend, is important. It is reassuring to know that should she require further attention, you will respond just as kindly as in the past. Now the Rebbe says, I do not know what your professional fee is in this case, so I'm taking the liberty of enclosing my check in the expectation that if it's inadequate, you will have your secretary call my office so I can rectify it. And then the Rebbe, he wanted to make sure that the doctor gets paid. Meaning, to speed the refuah, you have to make sure that the doctor gets paid. And this is how the Rebbe, more or less, always combined. And I'll tell you soon a personal story about that. Amazing story. Now, another letter here, the Rebbe writes to somebody, and this is the Rebbe's Ksav Yad, the whole thing. Hebrew letter. An answer to through your wife, that she says that she asked a question. She wrote to the Rebbe that her husband does not, he can't sleep at night, and they went to doctors, and he can't sleep, or sometimes he can't fall asleep. He can be up all night. Sometimes he wakes up after a couple hours, he doesn't sleep, and the whole day, she says, he's not himself. So the Rebbe answered like this. Also, Ruchnius now. First of all, he should be Masiyach Das. He should think about other things. And Mehanochain, Asher Tiya Besomoch Limitosai Mezuzah Keshero. He should have a mezuzah next to his bed. And besides the mezuzah on the door, that we know. Besides that, there should be a mezuzah and the mezuzah, you should put a keli on the mezuzah, which I don't want to go into it. You have to cover the mezuzah. But there should be a mezuzah. That's what the Rabbi answered. Meaning the sleeping has to do with that. And the Rabbi writes here with his own handwriting a whole thing that he heard from the Frierdiker Rebbe, that by the Nisim, they used to have a note, and especially by the Rebbe Maharash, where it says, Shivisi Hashem L'negdi Somit. The Eibishter is always in front of me. It should be near the bed. And the Rabbi is almost sure that by his Shver, the Frierdiker Rebbe, he had the mezuzah by his bed. And then the Rebbe goes into it, why it's supposed to be a keli and a keli, that I don't want to go into that. So this shows how much the Rebbe connected that to the physical health. Now, I would say that nowadays, since we can't ask the Rebbe, we don't know exactly what, so we have to try to think what the Rebbe would do in such cases. I mean, if you read the English letters or also the Igros Kodesh, the Hebrew letters, and there's answers for everything. People have certain issues. You can always do now, see what the Rebbe would have answered. Now I want to share with you a personal story, how the Rebbe connected spiritual with physical. In the 80s, my wife gave birth to twins. Now, nicht angedacht, then she lost a lot of blood. She was hemorrhaging, and they couldn't stop the blood. They push it. The doctor, this was a lady doctor, had to push it, sit on her to save the blood. The nurses were all around the bed, and my wife was like almost in a coma. She heard that the nurses were talking that she will not make it. It was a terrible time then. She will not make it, and she was in Sakone. My father-in-law, Rabbi Mindel, happened to walk into the hospital then, and he saw a doctor sitting on her, nurses all around, and the nurses say she might not make it. He ran to the Rebbe. Now, usually, whoever knew Rabbi Mindel, he would never use personal inyanim with the Rebbe. When he had to ask a personal inyan, he also used to write down like everybody else. When he went to dictation, that's work that he worked with the Rebbe, but he never bothered the Rebbe with personal things. That he did like a chassid. But over here, he saw what's happening. He ran to the Rebbe. He knocked on the door. The Rebbe opened up the door, came in, and he told the Rebbe what he saw now. So the Rebbe opened up his drawer, and he, with his hand, like that, a lot of nickels. He took out nickels, and he says, "Give it to her." And then the Rebbe said, since she was one of the few, there was a few ladies that started the Chabad cookbook years ago, before the Chabad cookbook. So in that schus, first of all, she should see that the hospital, if the hospital has a kosher kitchen. That's what the Rebbe said. And in that schus, the Rebbe gave her a full shlema, nothing to worry. Here he comes in, and he says the matzav. The Rebbe right away looked in the Ruchnius, and this is what the Rebbe Baruch Hashem Alichas Yomim B'Shon B'Tevis. So we see over here how the Gashmis and the Ruchnius are always, when sometimes things happen which is not the way it's supposed to be, always look into your inyan, look in what you can do, and bifrat, when you can look in the Igros. And the English letters, the letter in the Spirit, has a lot of answers on many questions that people ask. So we have to try to see how the Rebbe would answer on certain things. Bichlal, now we're getting closer to the month of Elul, and Elul is a time to check mezuzahs and check film. So that's zikr, a thing that everybody should do, and that will zikr help for everything. In Mirz Hashem, next week we'll continue our weekly program. Thank you.